So guys, this far we have been writing code in just one TypeScript file right here, index.ts. And when we compile it to JavaScript, we get one output file. That's fine for this case and learning purpose, but when we create a real project which is way more complex, you might have several TypeScript files, several JavaScript files, and other files as well. So when we take the first steps in project creation, we need to make many fundamental decisions. One of those steps is a project structure. Now, the project structure is the foundation. The correctness of the choice affects the introduction of new functionality into the project, support, onboarding new people into the project, etc. Now, when we define a project structure, we think of our project in terms of data domains, business logic, views, as well as dependencies and reusability of these components. When testing projects too, we follow a certain folder structure to organize your page classes, test data, utility classes, and all other project dependencies. So the key guidelines here are: number one, structure the app or your automation project such that you can locate code quickly. And number two, have a near term view of implementation and a long term vision. Start small, but keep in mind where the app or the automation project is heading down the road. This means that you should not lock yourself to one structure since it will change a lot depending on the project. Now, typically for a simple React app, you would see an SRC folder at the root, and that contains subfolders like assets, components, containers, context, HOC, which are high order components, and store. Then you do have node underscore modules folder containing all the project related dependencies, and a public folder that gets dealt by the web server in the end. So for our mini project, we do require a folder structure to organize all our code files. We'll have one SRC folder when we keep all our TypeScript files, and then one public folder where we have all the files we would deploy at the end to some kind of web server. So let's first create both of these folders. So we have public at the root and SRC also at the root. Okay, now what are my public files? Index.html and styles.css. Let us move those inside public folder. Done. Let us move this index.ts inside src. Okay, and let's delete index.js because now after creating this tsconfig.json file, it asks the TypeScript compiler to move the equivalent JavaScript file directly inside the public folder. Okay, now inside this src folder, I need to create three more subfolders, namely classes, interfaces, and helpers. Now inside interfaces, we are going to create one file with the name summary.ts, and that we are going to create the interface I summary, like so. Now inside that, we are going to declare a method summary. Okay, and this is the signature of it. Okay, so we have learned both the type signature as well as the interfaces in the previous videos. Okay, so very good. Let's save this. Now this far we have been compiling just index.ts file using tsc, name of the file, index.ts --w. Now as we have multiple source file, we are in need of a better way to compile all source files in one go. And guys, to achieve, you just create your wish list, hand it over to Genie, and consider it done. So that list of wishes goes into your tsconfig.json file, and the TypeScript compiler is your Genie. Now basically by doing so, you are overwriting the default setting of TypeScript compiler. Isn't that great? You can tune TypeScript compiler to suit to your project requirements. So why don't we delete the existing tsconfig.json file and start fresh? Now you can create it by yourself manually, as it is just a regular JSON file, or you can ask the compiler to generate one for you automatically. We'll start first with creating it manually and understand what are the some top level options available there in tsconfig.json. So at the root, create your file tsconfig.json. Okay, now it's a JSON file. You have to create this object. Okay, like so. Now inside this object you have to provide in the key value pairs, but you have the intelligence available. Okay, so the moment you type double quotes, you see all these options. Okay, let's scroll through these ones. Okay, so these are the top level options that we have. These are called as root fields. These options relate to how your TypeScript or JavaScript project is set up. Let's go over some of the important ones. And the first one in the list is, of course, compiler options. Now, this again is an object, as you could see, and this object contains various options to tune TypeScript's configuration according to your project's requirements. You can simply say it covers how the language should work. Now, you again, inside this, you type these double quotes, okay, and you see these options. Let's pick three options for now because in here there's just so many options. Okay, the first one we are going to start with is target. Now this basically signifies which target of JavaScript you should be emitting from the given TypeScript. Again, let's delete this to control space and you see a list of options. Okay, we'll start with ES5 first. Next one in the list is, and for that you just have to add this comma in here. Come down again, select now root dir. Okay, now this signifies the root directory of input files. Any guesses what that would be in our case? It's simple, right? It is going to be the source src. Okay, like so. And finally we have this out dir. Okay, and it signifies the directory where the JS files will be emitted. And in our case, it would be the public folder. So we say dot public, like so. Now, when I said JavaScript files, right, it also considers the type declaration files, which has got the extension .d.ts and also .js and .map files. Okay, so let's save the changes here. Okay, and in the terminal, execute now tsc. Okay, and we pass in this flag w to watch my changes. Okay, so this will compile all our files into source folder. Okay, guys, check the location please where you are running this command, since the presence of a tsconfig.json file in the directory indicates that the directory is the root of TypeScript file. Okay, so we see index.js under this public folder, right? Then we also have this folder interfaces created under public, and under that you have summary.js. Okay, when I click on it, currently it is empty. Okay, poor interfaces. They don't have an equivalent JavaScript code. Just like we saw, type information provided in the TypeScript file does not reflect into the respective JavaScript files. Okay, now let's create a TypeScript file test.ts outside the source folder. Okay, so we created the root of the project and we say test.ts, and I'm going to create a function in here. Guys, you see immediately we start getting this error. Okay, and the error states that the all files should exist, okay, under this source folder. And because the compiler is already running, despite of this error, it has already created this test.js file. Okay, and if we have any code in here like const sum, and we just say a and b, okay, and that returns us a plus b. Okay, save it, and in here also we have this code, right? But we are getting this error. So there are two problems in here, right? Number one, we are getting this error, right? Compiler is complaining about this file that it should be inside this source folder because that is being set as our root directory, right? The other is, guys, there's a problem, right? So what do you expect in that case? Ideally, the compilation should not happen. So no JavaScript file should be emitted. Okay. So we are going to fix both of these issues. Okay. So the first issue is this. All right. How to fix that? Now for that, we close these. Okay. And I just delete this test.js. Okay. And I go to tsconfig.json, and in here there's a property called as include. Okay, now this specifies an array of file names or patterns that need to be included in the compilation process. Okay, so what do we have to say in here? We have to say src. And I also mentioned about the pattern, so the pattern would be the globe patterns like so. Okay, so you can use those file characters in here. Right now, just with this change, let me save it. Okay, and now you see the problem is gone, and also we have not compiled this test.ts file, guys. And since this is an array, if you have more folders in, which you want to consider in your compilation, you just provide those folders in here. All right, now likewise we also have a flag which is called as exclude. Okay, now it specifies an array of file names or patterns that need to be excluded in the compilation process. Okay, now let's get rid of uh, this test.ts. We don't require this anymore because we have understood this concept of root directory and include and exclude. All right, but what do we have in exclude normally, right? So we have like node underscore modules. Why? Because in some packages, right, there are some ts files as well, and you don't want those to be transcompiled into equivalent javascript files. At times if we do so, we get error. Okay, and here also you can use the group pattern like I mentioned. Now guys, let us look at our index.js. Let's compare our index.js and index.ts. Okay, so we in the config, right, the target currently is set to es5. Okay, so so in here, which one should we pick? Let's pick this one. Okay, so in here this is using a fat arrow syntax. All right, so if we go to index.js for get employees, what do we see? All right, it is still using var and it is using a regular function syntax. Okay, now if I change this to, let's say, some latest version of javascript, es18, save it again. Okay, and now if we go to the js file, what do we see, guys? All right, so you see we are now using the fat arrow syntax. Okay, that's a use of a target. All right, next one in the list is key, which is a root level property. Let me change it to es5 only and talk about this extends flag. Now it defines which base configuration you may want to use, if there are any. So let me show you practically. Let's create a file with the name tsconfig.base.json. You can give it any name. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to cut this whole thing from here. Okay, this is our main tsconfig.json file which our compiler will look at. Okay, but in this I just come in here, paste all that information. All right, like so, and then I come in here and I just say extends. Okay, like so, and I then provide in the relative path of this particular file. So I say dot forward slash tsconfig dot base dot json. Okay, now what has happened here is that now compiler will look at this file, and this file, in this file we are mentioning that we are extending this another file. Okay, so now compiler will have access to all the things that we have mentioned inside this. But guys, you can still overwrite it. For example, we say compiler options. Okay, and then in here we say target, and let's say ES 2018. Okay, let's see that now. So in base we have ES5. Okay, but in here we have this, and we do not have any index.js file. So if I compile it now, will I see the fat arrow syntax or I see the normal function? Okay, so I will see this because I can override this. All right, so I just say tsc hyphen hyphen w, hit enter. Okay, so we have found zero errors. We have index.js, and what do we see? We see fat arrow syntax in here. All right, so you can override that. So I've stopped the compilation. Okay, and we'll now understand the other use cases of this approach. Now, depending upon the JavaScript runtime environment which you intend to run your code in, there may be a base configuration which you can use. Okay, and there are few tsconfig bases already. Like you can search them on npm. I have already opened some of these. So you have this tsconfig recommended. Okay, in here you have all these settings. So it's one of the package. You just install it. All right, and you will have access to this. Then you have this if you want to run your application specifically on Node 14 environment. Then you also have this package. Same way for React Native, you have this. Okay. So guys, for your future reference, I'm going to rename it because now we are moving toward the automatic way of generating tsconfig. So I just rename it to manual hyphen tsconfig. Okay, like so. And again, I prefer to, let's say, delete this index.js. Okay, rest we are good. All right. So now if I have to generate this, okay, automatically, the command that I have to use in the terminal is tsc space hyphen hyphen init, like so. A file is created. Let's open that. So out of the box, you see a list of compiler options to tune the compiler according to your needs. Also, Microsoft has done a great job in providing these helpful comments against these keys. These comments will help you in finding the properties you want to turn on or off for your project. Now, let's look at line number 3. Okay, so if you open the link, okay, you'll find more information about these options, and there are many more options which are not listed out of the box. Okay, so guys, in the manual part, what did we do? We updated these two values. Okay, so let's do that first. I'm going to uncomment these, and in the out dir we have to say public. Okay, and in the root dir I have to say src, like so. Okay, now let's enable this declaration as well. Now, this generates corresponding type definition files, which are very handy when you are making an npm project for others to use, because these declaration file, avoid the misuse of the library, and also provide in those compiler options like intelligence and auto completion. Besides these, let me quickly walk you through some important ones. You scroll down, and in here you see strict type checking options and additional checks. So I'm going to enable all of these. Why? That's an important question. Now, you want to enable both of these to get the best of TypeScript type checking behavior. Primarily, these options check for implicit any, null, undefined, unused variables or parameters, function types, etc. So, save and start the compiler. Okay. Now, basically, these options would ensure you follow certain good coding conventions to have less error prone code. Okay, so if I just say tsc double dash w, okay, I get 7 errors, right? But guys, the thing is, despite of these errors, right, we have these output files emitted. Okay, like index.d.ts. Let's look at it, right? We were talking about that. So you could see we have just a declaration, right? So this is what you see in the hint. When you say dot, you get auto completion or that intelligence, right? It comes from this file. Okay, so we talked about it earlier as well, that despite of the error, we are generating the file, and here also we see that. Okay, now how can we change this behavior? What behavior? Well, when there is an error, I don't want to emit out these JavaScript files. Okay, I want compiler to only report me the problems and not generate these files. What do I do then? Okay, let's scroll up for that, and you say no emit, right? We have this option, but the problem with this is when you say no emit, even if there are no errors, right, still you'll not see any output files. Okay, so you got to change it to no emit on error, and now there will be no output files if there is an error in your TypeScript file. Okay, so we save it again, and we have the same number of errors because we have not fixed anything. So we go to index.ts and start fixing these. All right, so here is one error, and guys, at times you see that in the file, right, you're not seeing those errors. Okay, you're not seeing those errors, but in the console you're getting this message. Okay, so we save it, and I hope, okay, one error is gone. Basically, I mean, these errors are talking about implicit any, some variables are declared, like in this parameter is here but not used, and also like this constant c, right, is not used. Okay, so we get rid of these, provide in the types. Okay, and for optional as well we provide in this. Okay, let me save it. Is it any better now? Okay, so we have got just one error, and because of this, because e could be undefined, and we have fixed this error in the previous videos as well. So it's simple, we say if e, meaning if it is not undefined, then we should run this, else just say a plus b. Save it. Guys, all the errors are gone now. Okay, now I mentioned that in line 3 you have this link. Let's open this as well. I'll already open that in here. So in the compiler options, okay, before that, so top level, right, we've already covered all these. Yeah, I think I missed the files one, right? So what is this files? So basically, guys, when you have a lot of files, you go for include. But if you have a small project, then you don't require include, and you can mention those files directly in your files array. This is also an array. So if we come down, okay, and in here I just say files. Okay, this is also an array. All right, this is what I was saying. All right, so let's go back to that page. So in the compiler options, there are further subcategories like project options. Okay, now in here you see a lot of things, like we have already covered declaration, and I guess target as well. Out dir we have done. uh, Lib, right, this is an important one. The purpose of this is that it specifies library files to be included in the compilation. Now why? So at times for compilation you require certain types file, and if those are missing you get an error. All right, so if I just open that, what do I see about lib? TypeScript includes a default set of type definition for built-in JS APIs like math, as well as type definition for things found in browser environments like document. Types could also include API for newer JS features matching the target you specify. For example, the definition of map is available if target is ES6 or newer. You may want to change these for a few reasons. Your program does not run in the browser, so you don't want the DOM type definitions. Okay, the runtime environment provides certain JavaScript API objects, maybe through polyfills, but does not yet support the full syntax of given ECMAScript version. You have polyfills or native implementation for some, but not for all, right? So these are some of the reasons why you can. So I wanted to mention this because if you're not able to compile your project, you'll not be able to work with that, right? So therefore, this is one of an important function or a parameter, I would say, right? Others are like if you want to work in your project both with JavaScript and TypeScript, then you allow JS, and even these are handy when when you talk about migration, when you're migrating your JavaScript project into TypeScript, right? Strict checks we have already talked about. Module resolution, basically, this is to do with how you are importing and exporting your modules, right? Linters check again is very important because there are a lot of great tools like ESLint that checks your code against, or you can say that those linters do then a static code analysis, right? So you can also include those in here. Okay, so guys, please spend some time on this page and go through these features. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.